I've been in Japan, I first came to Japan in 1989, and I was here for 5 years. When I left, I went back to the States for a couple of years for my graduate study. Then I was in Bangkok, Thailand for 5 years, and then 10 years ago I came back to Japan. So I've had some experience trying to function within an Asian context, not only Japan but in other contexts. And as I often do research in Cambodia for Laos, or I'm back in Thailand often. And a lot of my friends ask me, well, why do you come back to Thailand so often? Why don't you live in Thailand? Why do you stay in Japan? So, well, it's not so much about where you are or where you're happiest, but it's about making yourself happy where you are. Right? It's not about I prefer Thailand or Cambodia or Japan, but I want to stay in Japan. Therefore, I need to find ways to make myself happy and to make myself useful in this country. And it's my job. And I'm still the guest here. I'm still the foreigner here. And it's not a significant part of the responsibility is on me to adapt myself to this particular context. One of the things that I learned when I was in university is I became a lifeguard. And I had to learn how to be a lifeguard at a university class. It was a physical education class, which I got credit for. But I had to learn how to be a lifeguard, but I was here with all these football players from the football team. And we had to rescue each other from within the swimming pool. And the coach who was teaching this class, I'm not very big for an American. And he said, there's a linebacker over here, he's going to jump in the pool, and I'm going to have to save this guy. And I had to pull him all the way across the swimming pool. And the coach also said, this linebacker, if you don't fight like you're drowning, you're going to fail the course. So here I am, I'm going to have to grab this struggling guy. But one of the things that coaches said is you never go in and try to control that person. You grab that person, let them roll like an alligator, roll, but you just slowly bring them in the way that you want to. So you don't fight against the system, but you learn how to adapt to the system. You learn how to manage the system. And I'm no longer a lifeguard. I still like swimming, but I'm no longer a lifeguard. But that lesson has been very, very important to me, particularly working in Japan or Thailand or Cambodia. I will never be able to change the system. I might be able to adapt the system slowly over time, which I think has happened at our university in some ways. But it's my responsibility to work within that system effectively and to be able to get what I want accomplished and also to meet the goals expected at the university. So that dealing with the culture shock of what's expected in an institution is very important. The last point there is that these dependency relationships. From a Western perspective, I don't want to be in a dependent relationship. I want to be able to work autonomously. I want to be able to work independently. That doesn't happen here, so I actually have to work in a dependent relationship with my Japanese colleagues, and that's a good thing. I can get so much more done that way, but I have to recognize that, and I have to make those accommodations in order to achieve my goals and also the goals of the university. There was a question in the previous session about the participatory management and its applicability to Japan. And I think in some ways, there's the consensus building that is very prevalent here in the management system here is very similar to the participatory management system, and that it does take more time. It's more time consuming, but you do have that sharing of information, and particularly on the foreign side, that sharing of ownership of the program. And in both, but I mean, it's a two-edged sword. It cuts both ways. You do have that shared ownership, but it does take more time. But I think that's an overlap between participatory management and the cultural context here in Japan. That's a nice marriage between the two. The administrative structure and relationship. A number of presentations have talked about that, but it's almost like you have two organizations that are side by side. What's on paper and what really works. I had one of those moments last week, and I was thinking, why am I still in Japan? Because I've been trying to achieve something administratively that had been taking a tremendous amount of time. But luckily I came back on campus. I knew a Japanese faculty member that I could go to. I spoke to him, and what I had been trying to do over the last 3 months was taken care of in about 30 minutes. So having that relationship, not only one relationship, but multiple relationships throughout the administrative structure is extremely important. When I was the assistant director of the World Language Center, the director was Japanese, still is Japanese. So I had sort of a cushion between myself and the Japanese administration. Now in my role as the chair of the graduate program, I don't have that cushion anymore. So I'm learning as I go along. I'm honing my skills, I hope, developing these relationships so that I can achieve the objectives that I'm hoping to have. But again, I have to, from a Western perspective, I have to change my conceptualization in that, from a Western viewpoint, I need to be able to do this by myself. I need to be able to do this independently. That's not seen as a positive aspect. I need to work together and reach out to these individuals. I'm constantly apologizing. I'm sorry I have to bother you again. I'm sorry I have to bother you again. But that's my culture speaking, not what's actually happening within the context. That's what's supposed to happen. I don't necessarily need to apologize for that. I think the developing strategic alliances is extremely important. In developing the World Language Center, we also developed collaborative relationships with other departments. And one of the departments that we worked with, we found there were 1 or 2 faculty members that were Japanese in that department who were looking for someone with whom they could work well. And we started working with them, and we developed what later became known as the International Program in the Economics Department. That program was extremely successful. And as a result of that program, in that particular department, the business department developed a global program. And just this year, our university opened a global citizenship program, which are very similar. They're similar in those models. Engineering department, law department. So it grew from one small group of individual faculty members working effectively together. And other faculties looked at that and said, well, that looks like that's what we do. We like to have that, but we want to adapt it to what our vision is. So we had to collaborate in a slightly different way. And there were lots of issues about, for example, working with the engineering department. Our teachers have to learn a lot about engineering, about information systems, environmental engineering. And at the same time, their faculty members have to learn about the language learning process, that it doesn't happen overnight and it takes time. So there's a lot of give and take on both sides. And I think we have, luckily, we have developed a situation where we have a critical mass of faculty members, both Japanese and foreign, who are able to work together, produce results that are appreciated within different faculties and as the university as a whole. Having said that, none of this would have been possible without influential people, influential faculty members at the universities. And you can tell when one influential faculty member moved from one position, in some cases to a higher position, that causes this whole process to take a step back, because the person who comes into that original position is not as willing or not as interested in supporting. So the strategic relationships with those influential people are extremely important, but they have to be multifaceted throughout the university. Having said that, the leadership has to come from the top. It has to be a vision of internationalization or cooperation or collaboration to allow this to happen, to be developed. And when we went, for 8 years, I went back to the university and said, we need to work they supported our vision, and our vision was coincided with theirs, but we were also producing results, and we were learning how to collaborate with them. So in many ways, in some ways we have a unique situation, but not so unique that it couldn't be transported to other places. I think it's very important for foreign faculty members to be consistent and fair, and try not to let our emotions get the better of us. A screaming gaijin never gets anything accomplished. But being consistent and being fair is recognized and appreciated. And I think considering the reflection in the mirror is whenever I think of the challenges that I'm facing in Japan administratively or with colleagues, I imagine myself in the United States at an American university facing the same challenges with all Americans. I'm thinking, oh, Japan is not so bad after all. I'm happy to stay here. So it's not so much about Japan, but it's about administrative challenges, cultural conflict, cultural understanding that exists anywhere. And every country has its own unique perspective. And I think maintaining perspective is very important. Rome was never built in a day. You're always going to have failures. There is a saying in Japanese where it says fall down 7 times to get up 8 times. You're going to fall. You're going to have failures, but that's okay. Just get up and keep moving and keep going on. So just in conclusion, Japan has a long history of internationalization. And I'm very bullish and very positive because I think the new focus on internationalization, bringing in international students, has the potential, the jury is still out, but the potential to change the dynamic within higher education. And I'm very hopeful that will be the case. The working within a culturally different system is challenging, but if we want to remain here, we want to continue to be supportive of our Japanese colleagues, it's absolutely necessary. But I think with that persistence,